everyone, it's Sevi and welcome back to another CE server video, this time for Genshin Luna 4, which is the upcoming version. Now, when they went to the special program, I did expect them to talk about Columbina, Zibai, and Iluga because they drip marketed those characters, but I did not expect the Lunar Crystallize reaction to be a thing. So in this video, I want to talk about the Lunar Crystallize reaction a little bit more, so let's just get into it. Now, what is Lunar Crystallize compared to the normal Crystallize that we've had since the dawn of Genshin Impact? So to start, Lunar Crystallize is triggered when someone on the team, such as Columbina or Zibai, can enable Lunar Crystallize and Hydro meets GEO. So currently, it's only a reaction that happens between the Hydro element and the GEO element. Even if you have Columbina on the team who enables Lunar Crystallize, when Pyro meets GEO, for example, you're going to get the usual Crystallize reaction. But with Columbina on the team, if Hydro meets GEO, then you get Lunar Crystallize. When that happens, 3 moon drifts will appear, and these are basically GEO turrets. Now, each of these GEO turrets will fire rocks dealing Lunar Crystallize damage, and they will fire every 3 times that Lunar Crystallize is triggered while the turrets are on field. Of course, if the turrets disappear because no Lunar Crystallize was triggered for a while, then, they'll disappear. So, every 3 times Lunar Crystallize is triggered by your characters, then all of the rocks are going to fire damage, and that's going to be counted as Lunar Crystallize damage. What can we infer from this? Well, Lunar Crystallize directly scales based on how fast your teammates can trigger Lunar Crystallize, versus Lunar Charged, which deals damage at a fixed 2-second interval, no matter how quickly you proc Lunar Charged with your teammates. This means that each team member's elemental application towards the reaction can contribute to that, and you're going to get more benefits out of using teammates that can more quickly apply the elements, more quickly apply GEO, more quickly apply Hydro. And this is kind of interesting because until now, GEO application or the speed of GEO application from GEO characters has never really mattered all that much, which is why I'm pretty interested in this reaction. So just to emphasize, Lunar Crystallize is an offensive reaction. It does damage, and this is a sharp contrast to the normal Crystallize reaction that we've had since the dawn of Genshin, because it creates a crystallized shard, and when you pick that up, it turns into a shield for you, which is a purely defensive reaction. It hasn't had any purposes towards offense, except for characters like Navia, who gain certain buffs or gain certain perks when they are under a crystallized shield. So those are like very specific case scenarios, but this Lunar Crystallize now, since it's a damage dealing reaction, that kind of changes the game when it comes to like the entire crystallized thing. Now, when it comes to the damage calculation of Lunar Crystallize, it is going to have similarities to Lunar Charged, wherein it uses the stats of the party members involved in the reaction. And since Lunar Crystallize can crit, it also accounts for the crit stats of those characters that were involved in the reaction. Now, to delve further into the stat considerations of Lunar Crystallize, I'll talk about that towards the end of the video. For now, let's move on to characters that you might want to play around with when it comes to Lunar Crystallize, because they got some interesting synergies and accommodations for the new reaction. Now, I am going to expect to see more Lunar Crystallize potential once Zibai releases in the second half of Luna 4, because according to the special program, she's gonna have a pretty heavy emphasis on Lunar Crystallize. Like, triggering Lunar Crystallize is going to buff her kit. Her kit will also likely take advantage of like the Lunar Crystallize triggers, or is going to buff Lunar Crystallize triggers or something like that, and probably deal Lunar Crystallize damage directly and all that, just in the same way that the recent Nodcry characters have been like directly interacting with the other Lunar reactions as well. So just if that pattern's anything to go by. But aside from Zibai, a bunch of the older characters, they also have ways of interacting with Lunar Crystallize that are going to be pretty fun. So I want to start with Chiori. By default, Chiori only summons 1 Tomoto doll with her skill. However, if there's a GEO construct on the field, she's going to summon her additional Tomoto doll. Now, this was previously locked behind character-made constructs such as Zhongli's Pillar, Albedo's Flower, even Ningguang's Jade Screen, and of course GEO Traveler's structures. But actually, moon drifts from the Lunar Crystallize reaction are counted as GEO constructs. And simply by having Columbina on the team to enable the Lunar Crystallize reaction, that's going to allow Chiori to summon her second Tomoto. Also, Chiori has a passive that gives a 20% Geo damage bonus if there's a Geo construct on the field. Even if this isn't like directly related to the Lunar Crystallize's damage or anything like that, just the property of the Lunar Crystallize moon drifts counting as Geo constructs, Chiori already gets some benefits. So, by virtue of Chiori having this synergy, this actually also boosts synergy with another Fontaine character. And the next one I want to talk about is Navia. So, as a quick recap, Navia delivers the maximum damage from her skill Shotgun when she has 6 stacks of Crystal Shrapnel. And previously, she would get these stacks in one of 2 ways. When her burst ammo hits an opponent, or when she or a teammate absorbs a Crystal Shard from the regular Crystallize reaction. Now, that could be a bit cumbersome because absorbing Crystallized shards they're not really made conveniently, but she did have the perk where if you hold her skill, she'll just suck up nearby shards, which did make it a bit easier. But they have now updated her skill to accommodate the Lunar Crystallize reaction. And how so? Well, now her skill gains a shrapnel stack simply by triggering a Lunar Crystallize reaction. And she gains up to 1 stack per second this way. This is a way easier condition to accumulate shrapnel stacks even without holding Navia's skill to suck up shards. It is currently locked behind Columbina and probably later on Zibai, but if you have Lunar Crystallize enabled by the team, then it's just easier to accumulate shrapnel stacks that way. Now, I did want to link this to Chiori's synergy with Lunar Crystallize because Chiori actually makes a great partner for Navia for the off-field damage and application that Chiori gives, but you really only get Chiori's full potential with 2 Tomoto dolls out, and Navia herself doesn't make any Geo structures. So, what does that mean? Well, previously, Navia Chiori teams would want Chiori's C1 to summon the second doll unconditionally, or have a teammate that creates Geo structures. But again, with Lunar Crystallize on the team, because the moondrifts are Geo constructs, Chiori gets her second doll, Navia gets great off-field damage dealing teammate, easier ways to accumulate shrapnel stacks, and it's just better all around, that entire synergy. Now, another Geo character I want to pull up is Grandpa. Zhongli's synergy with Lunar Crystallize, it doesn't translate to as much damage as Navia and Chiori, but there's still something that happens, and I find it a bit amusing. Now, Zhongli's pillar from his skill, it periodically deals Geo damage. It doesn't deal much Geo damage, but it does deal Geo damage. And if there are Geo constructs nearby, they're going to resonate with a pillar and also deal Geo damage periodically. Well, again, moondrifts are Geo constructs, so they also resonate with damage with Zhongli's pillar. Those moondrifts also don't count towards the 3 Geo construct limit, actually, so you can have other player-made constructs down as well, and they'll all do the Zhongli pillar thing. You can have Travelers Geo constructs down, you can have Albedo's Geo constructs down, and they will resonate. Now, I'm not going to forget the 4 stars. Ningguang is one that I thought of and one that my chat thought of as the special program was going. When it comes to elemental application, I did want to check in on her because Ningguang is a Geo Catalyst user, so her normal attacks by default apply Geo. Now, Ningguang does have standard ICD on her normal attacks, which means that she will apply Geo every 3 hits or every 2.5 seconds. But since she does 2 hits per normal attack, she can still trigger Moondrift shots relatively frequently. And this is mostly the case for her other attacks as well, where despite ICD rules, her charged attack and burst, they deal multiple Geo hits, so it can get through the elemental internal cooldowns a bit faster. Now, as a pretty old 4-star, I know that Ningguang has never really been a frequently played character for a while, but if you like her a lot and you want to mess around with Lunar Crystallize, she might be a pretty fun unit to try. The last one that I want to mention is Noelle. I also find this one pretty funny. It turns out that when Noelle infuses her normal attacks with Geo via her burst, her Geo normal attacks don't have internal cooldown, they don't have ICD, which means that each of her Geo infused normal attacks applies Geo. And upon testing, true enough, After every 3 swings of her mighty sword, those moon drifts shoot. She does swing pretty slowly, which is a bummer, and the main thing holding her back in this regard. But I think she'll still be a pretty useful teammate in proccing those Lunar Crystallize reactions alongside other GEO teammates. And, you know, Noelle mains, if you were looking for new fun ways to play Noelle, then here's one. And I am very curious what shenanigans you're going to be up to once Lunar Crystallize is officially out and you get to try it out. So those are the main GEO characters that I wanted to bring up. Now, of course, you have others. You have, like, Ito, you know, who does infuse his normally charged attacks with GEO damage, but I don't think it buffs him in any like specific way as the units that I previously mentioned. You also have Shilonen, who's going to be like a fun support for these teams as well, but these are like the main units that I kind of wanted to pull up because of the specific interactions that the synergy kind of introduces. Aside from that, there are also some equipment and effects that accommodate the new reaction, you know, just as how when Lunar Charged and Lunar Bloom entered the mix, there were a bunch of artifacts and equipment effects that were updated. So for Lunar Crystallize, the first big one is Archaic Petra. It's been around for a very long time, and most of the time the buff is actually good. It's just a pain to activate because you have to pick up a crystallized shard in order to get the 35% elemental damage bonus, and to do that consistently, it's a pain. But with Lunar Crystallize now, simply by triggering Lunar Crystallize, you already gain the team-wide 35% elemental damage bonus. However, since Lunar Crystallize can only be procced between Hydro and Geo, only Hydro is going to take advantage of that 35% elemental damage bonus. So that is the limitation. It's a bit unfortunate, but that being said, if you do have a Lunar Crystallize team and you have a Hydro unit, well, you will have a Hydro unit, and you want to buff the Hydro damage, then putting in Archaic Petra on one of your units is an option. Another artifact set is the Nighttime Whispers set, which is Navia's signature set. The 4-piece set effect will also get triggered when there are moon drifts nearby, which should be easy to maintain in a Lunar Crystallized team. I mean, the idea is to have those moon drifts up as much as possible, so you don't have to keep worrying too much about having a crystallized shield anymore, which was the original condition of proccing the 4-piece set. There's also Verdict, which is Navia's signature weapon, and the Verdict accumulates stacks from triggering Lunar Crystallize now, but it does limit to 1 stack per second via Lunar Crystallize. Otherwise, it'll probably just stack up immediately. I don't know, they wanted to put a cooldown on there for some reason. And again, this could only previously be activated by obtaining crystallized shards. One thing I did find funny is that the Emerald Orb, this 3-star weapon that uses Hydro reactions for its passive, it wasn't updated to accommodate Lunar Crystallize for some reason. Now, going back to the question of the Lunar Crystallize damage calculation, or as I would rather reframe it, what about building for Lunar Crystallize damage? Now, again, I usually refer to the wiki to look at the damage formula and see what factors are involved or are going to be relevant in terms of stats, but the wiki doesn't have that info yet as I'm making this video, and I don't do leaks. What can we infer? Well, Lunar Crystallize is still counted as a transformative reaction as the rest of the lunar reactions are. So it's safe to say that EM is going to play a significant factor in the damage. And aside from that, the damage of the Lunar Crystallize hits can crit. And similar to Lunar Charge, they are going to be based on the stats of the characters involved in the reaction. If you have characters who are involved and they do build crit, then that's at least going to contribute to the reaction damage of the Lunar Crystallize. What about the EM though? EM, transformative reaction, does that mean that you want to stack up EM on your GEO characters all of a sudden? Well, at least now, EM stats aren't going to be entirely useless for GEO characters, but as with the previous cases for lunar reactions, unless the character's kit revolves almost entirely around EM, like how Lauma's does or how Nephris does, it's a safer bet for now to just build your GEO characters as you usually would, and then rely on EM buffs from teammates or equipment to boost the Moondrift damage. And remember as well that Nodcry units also come with direct bonuses to lunar reaction damage too, such as this Columbina's passive, and Zibai is probably going to have her own direct buff to Lunar Crystallize damage as well. It's those buffs that you can stack up and count on without having to change change the build of your damage dealing GEO characters all that much. So just keep that in mind, and we'll see if future info or future updates are going to change that. Now, to cap this off, I just want to say it's a little bit tough when it comes to these lunar reactions and even Lunar Crystallize, because as excited as I am that Lunar Crystallize is a thing now and GEO finally gets an update to it, I feel like there are reactions that were made to make certain characters more interesting and meta and marketable. Zibai and columbina, for example, versus reactions that can broadly change the way elements interact as a whole in the way that Dendro and Dendro reactions work. I hope that made sense. Basically, with Lunar Crystallize, I expect the meta teams to heavily revolve around Columbina and Zibai. Like, I'm glad that these older characters that I discussed earlier, they do get fun synergies and interactions with them. And let's be real, GEO itself was kind of overdue for an update for reactions. But I really just mostly see these new reactions servicing the new characters, especially to make them stand out, to make them more special, and to make them more unique in terms of mechanics. But let me know your thoughts on that, and let me know if you're going to be playing around with the new Lunar Crystallize reaction once the update is out. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you soon. Take care!